My guest this evening is Nicholas Gerber, and Mitchell is joining us right now from Vietnam. Mitchell, hello, welcome to Crowdsource the Truth.
Thank you, Jason. Nice to meet you and be on your show. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening to me.
So, Mitchell, you've been an activist for a long time. You've been traveling around the world. I think a lot of people in the United States are not necessarily familiar with Falun Gong. I used to see them quite a bit meditating and doing what sort of looked like yoga to me around New York City, but I haven't seen them in a while. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became involved in this and what Falun Gong is all about?
Absolutely. Well, I've been an activist for about maybe 20 years, exposing this new form of evil that is happening in China against this spiritual movement called the Falun Gong and others. First of all, I'll share with you, like you said, what Falun Gong is. It's a simple spiritual meditation, Jason. It incorporates 5 exercises, meditation, and very similar to Chinese yoga, Tai Chi, but with Falun Gong, pronounced Falun Gong or Falun Dafa. It's a mind and body spirit, a spiritual movement, a very powerful, holistic exercise and meditation that became the largest in China. It grew to become the largest, where 1 out of every 12 Chinese national citizens were practicing these 5 slow-moving, easy-to-learn, free exercises that really bring the body to an incredible state of health, spiritual vitality, and just positive feelings. And I started to learn Falun Gong in 2001. It was introduced to the public in 1992 in China, spread like wildfire, became the life force of China, where 1 out of every 12 Chinese national citizens were practicing, all walks of life, all religions, nationalities, creeds, classes. More than half of upper class society were practicing. The 7 highest ranking government officials were practicing, and their families, military generals, professors, business executives, the rural class, the middle class, like I said, were all practicing these slow-moving exercises. And as you can see from the pictures that you're showing, that's the kind of popularity it was having in China. I mean, you could see them in sports stadiums, hundreds and thousands, tens of millions of people practicing the Falun Gong exercises, and also living a higher standard of morality in terms of the philosophy of Falun Gong, which is simple and universal in all different spiritualities and religions, namely truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. So when this practice became the largest in China, the Communist Chinese Party, the official title of the gangster totalitarian regime that controls the Chinese government, that controls China and controls the Chinese people for the last 50 years, grew very threatened and wary of its power and popularity, and therefore banned it and outlawed it in 1999.
It's really hard to imagine an entire government basically banning what I think most people would see as just like a form of exercise. It's pretty similar to yoga, stretching, breathing, philosophy of kindness and all that, and yet the Chinese government hates it.
Absolutely. It's so simple and so natural, and you know, to really understand why the persecution started and why Falun Gong has been so persecuted, it has to be understood that there's no limit how far the communist regime will go to persecute something so peaceful, so healthy, so non-political. And in 1999, the former president of China, Jiang Zemin, you know, everyone is familiar with Hu Jintao and President Xi, who's now become a dictator and a supreme leader of China, which is totally undiplomatic and unconstitutional in normal countries. But now he's become a supreme leader. But not many people are familiar with Jiang Zemin, who was the evil head, the military dictator of China between 1999, or the former president of China. And because Falun Gong, there are three reasons why it was outlawed. Falun Gong was outlawed, number one, because of the popularity. It spread to become the largest spiritual movement in all of China. Number two, the ideology of Falun Gong clashed with the ideology of the communist regime. The ideology of Falun Gong is just very peaceful, very upright, truthful, compassionate, tolerant, teaching people to consider other people. People, don't steal, don't hurt, don't harm. Be very kind to your spouse. Be very good to your children. Be very good to your workers. Tell the truth. Be honest. Be sincere. Whereas the ideology of the communist regime is despotic in nature. It's anti-universe. It's anti-freedom. The history of murder that the communist regime has under its belt. There have been many civilizations and empires and governments that have killed in order to conquer. The Chinese Communist Party conquered in order to kill. They have killed more and caused more unnatural deaths than 2 world wars combined. They've wiped out and decimated up to 5,000 years of Chinese culture. There's the inhumane atrocities against animals, the environmental crisis, the one-child policy that has killed and murdered millions of innocent Chinese girls, and the brutal crackdown of not only the Falun Gong or the Falun Dafa practitioners, but to the Tibetan Buddhists, the Uyghur Muslims, the House Christians, democratic rights activists, homosexuals, anyone who has stood up against this murderous regime and this demonic cult that is called the communist regime has faced its demonic fury and brutal persecution. And when Falun Gong literally became the life force of China between 1992 and 1998, the communist regime under the military dictator Jiang Zemin did everything in its evil power out of hatefulness and jealousy to control the minds of the Chinese people, to turn public opinion against Falun Gong, labeling it an evil cult, a terrorist group, staging a Hollywood kind of stage scene of false fire, mainly forcing 5 people and a little girl to set themselves on fire in Tiananmen Square in 2001, staged the self-immolation event, which was later debunked by the world community in a documentary called False Fire, which can be looked up and read and viewed on YouTube. False Fire, and basically debunked that this was that the Falun Gong practitioners were killing themselves and burning themselves, and therefore this staged immolation was the pinnacle, was like the nail in the coffin to demonize Falun Gong, slander it as a cult, turn public opinion against it, and give the opening and the access and the confirmation of this new form of evil about to occur by 2001, where once the communist regime scapegoated Falun Gong, just like the Nazis did, or any kind of evil regime, even Pol Pot in Cambodia, which I visited actually, or Pinochet in Spain, or in the Armenian genocide, or even in Rwanda. Once an evil dictatorship scapegoats a specific group and turns public opinion against it, that gives them even a process and a confirmation to then start their final solution, which is to eradicate them, round them up, and then, worse yet, kill them for their organs. Because the third reason why the communist regime started to a campaign, a murderous and state-mandated campaign to eradicate Falun Gong, is to kill them for their organs. Because when you practice the exercises, the body, the organs, the health become incredibly healthy. So to this day, each year, 100,000 Falun Gong practitioners have been rounded up in cattle cars and sent to state-mandated hospitals, their organs cut out of their bodies while alive, and the bodies then burned in the boiler rooms of the ovens to conceal the evidence, and the organs then sold as the healthiest organs in the world illegally without any consent.
It's really astounding, and there's a lot of pictures online. I think this is something that a lot of people in the United States don't know about, and of course, we've heard about organ harvesting before, the Yellow House in Kosovo, and of course, reporting on Crowdsource the Truth and other YouTube channels have spoken about organ harvesting. And when you say it's a new kind of evil, of course, the first human organ transplant took place, I think, in 1966 in your native South Africa, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yes, correct.
So it's relatively new technology, and certainly during World War II or Vietnam or any of the massive wars that we've all heard about, this wasn't a technological possibility, the notion of taking a live organ out of an injured or captured person and putting it into somebody else. It's a relatively new thing. And even in the 60s, it wasn't until the 70s, the 80s, the 90s that this sort of practice became more commonplace. And of course now, today, there are many different types of organs that can be transplanted: livers, kidneys, hearts, lungs, eyes, all these different things. We've heard from other YouTube reporters that the value of an individual, strictly a dollar value of a human, when, like a car, when broken down into parts, can be financially very valuable. So we can see why certain people lacking morals or scruples would be financially interested in doing this. It's still very astounding. I was in China a couple of years ago for a film festival, Mitchell, and I remember asking my Chinese host about Falun Gong because, like I said, I had seen them around New York doing what, I mean, I thought they were just advertising an exercising program. I knew nothing about it. And there would be huge, you know, crowds of Chinese practitioners on the sidewalk doing, you know, as you say, something that looks like Tai Chi. When I asked this guy in China at the film festival about it, he didn't know anything about it. He Googled it, or whatever the Chinese equivalent of Google is, and the response was heresy.
Absolutely. This was a massive propaganda machine, still in use today. I mean, the communist regime has gone all out to demonize, destroy, slander, attack, persecute Falun Gong, and kill them now for their organs. And this has been what's different to all the organ harvesting around the world, Jason, and everybody that's listening, is that this is state sanctioned, this is state mandated. No other government in the history has targeted a massive amount of group of people. I mean, 100 million Falun Gong practitioners by 1998 were practicing. So this is a database of tens of millions of people, not excluding 70 million Uyghur Muslims who have been databased as well, according to Dr. Enver Tohti, who was a former surgeon in China, who actually I sat down with in London 2 weeks ago at a briefing in Westminster Abbey, along with David Kilgore, one of the Esquires, the former Secretary of State to the Canadian Parliament, Asian Pacific Division, and Ethan Gutman, a nominee of the Nobel Peace Prize of 2018 and an award-winning investigative watcher and China watcher who lived in China as well, who actually bared witness to the persecution, seeing many Falun Gong practitioners just being thrown into execution vans and hauled off to death camps, at least 36 around China. And in their reports, they have seen and detailed over 800 hospitals that have been working to expose or to extract organs illegally. I mean, these ladies and gentlemen, Jason, this is forced harvesting at its worst in history we've never seen in our lives. Taking out the organs, the transplantation surgery is the actual murder.
Wow.
So you would see basically doctors, and they got these accounts from the doctors by calling the labor camps, calling the medical associations, calling the military hospitals, calling the normal hospitals. All the doctors are complicit, the secret police, the military generals, the military police, the highest ranking officials of the communist regime. And like I said before, the former president of China, Jiang Zemin, institutionalized and established the 610 office at a Chinese Gestapo on June 10th, 1998, 1 month before the full persecution and outlaw of Falun Gong. And this office, this Gestapo type of office, sits on top of the Chinese government, that controls all levels of social, political, and economic spectrums for one purpose and one purpose only, to destroy Falun Gong, kill them for their organs, and make massive amounts of money off them. And there was a Vision Times article in 2015 by Ethan Gutman, the man who wrote The Slaughter, and I implore your audience to read The Slaughter by Ethan Gutman. And basically, yeah, that's the book, exactly what you got up on the screen. He was asked by the reporter, what was your reaction when you heard of the reports of organ harvesting? He responded, skeptical. I'm always skeptical when I'm on the threshold of a new investigation. What changed your mind? He mentioned the Kilgore and Mattis report. Now, the Kilgore and Mattis report, ladies and gentlemen, is the creme de la creme. This is the evidence that came out in 2006 by David Kilgore and David Mattis out of Canada. And they confirmed the allegations were true. And he continued, Ethan, in his response to the reporter, the phone calls into Chinese hospitals by Falun Gong investigators, which they actually have on tape, listening to the doctors saying, yeah, we have many Falun Gong practitioners' organs. They're like lobsters in a tank. You just come to China if you need organ transplant. Come to China. And that's why during these years, since 2006, you have seen massive amounts of increase in organ tourism, organ transplantation in Korea, in Pakistan, in the United States, in other places in the world. Only 4 countries around the world have banned organ tourism, which is Israel, Taiwan, Spain, and Italy. But to continue with the Ethan Gutman, what changed your mind? The Kilgore Mattis report, the phone calls into Chinese hospitals by Falun Gong investigators. But there is no substitute for personally cross-examining witnesses. One of our first subjects was a peasant woman, a Falun Gong practitioner, who had done serious time in a labor camp. Along with detailed accounts of torture, she briefly mentioned a physical exam. Yet under intense questioning, the exam sounded like it was administered in a hospital, turned upside down. The only possible medical rationale was to assess whether she could be exploited for her kidneys, her liver, her corneas, and perhaps her heart, the retail organs. Meanwhile, the woman was becoming increasingly annoyed with me. I mean, she had been tortured for God's sake. Her beliefs had been jeered and mocked, her family ruined. Why was the stupid white guy so interested in blood tests? She did not recognize the physical examination as having any importance. Of course, to me, this was investigative catnip. And might I add, Jason, that the reason why, again, the Falun Gong were targeted, because the group, when you practice the Falun Gong exercise, and I personally practice Falun Gong, anyone who likes yoga, anyone who likes fitness and health, yoga has become has mushroomed and blown up these later years in life, where people of all walks of life are practicing Falun Gong, yoga. Well, this was happening with Falun Gong in China, because when you practice the Falun Gong exercises, I mean, your body becomes so healthy. It's such an amazing, beautiful spiritual practice, so organic, natural, free of charge. You're not forced to practice anything. There's no hierarchy. There's no mandates. There's no rosters. There's no membership. It's just completely loose and people practice in the park. Practice I was the first one, I think, in San Diego who was introducing it to the yoga studios. I wanted more of the yoga people to become familiar with this, but yeah, it's such a beautiful practice. And if you see people in the park, just very similar to Tai Chi, but with Falun Gong, it targeted the body in such a way that in a matter of months, you would see all kinds of people, from leukemia, tuberculosis, heart disease, MS, even Bavarian cancer, hepatitis, all snap out of it. I mean, become incredibly healthy. And that's why the communist regime also targeted Falun Gong for a massive multi-million-dollar profiteering organ trafficking ring, because the organs become so healthy. You snap out of drugs and alcohol so fast. Your addictions become less. You become more positive. You feel happier. You work more. You focus better in school. You sleep better. So all around, I mean, there was a Chinese official, actually. There was a quote that I wanted to share with you. that before Falun Gong was outlawed, the here by 1999, Chinese officials went so far as to quantify Falun Gong's benefits, such as when one official from China's National Sports Commission, speaking with U.S. News and World Report, declared that Falun Dafa, or Falun Gong, can save each person 1,000 yuan. That's roughly about $258 a month in medical in medical fees. If 100 million people are practicing it, that's about 100 billion yuan saved per year, hundreds of millions of dollars. So,
Mitchell,
this is...
One of our viewers here on Periscope, DP970, is asking, what about the ricin poison attacks in Japan by Falun Gong followers? Do you know anything about that? I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, that was a state-sanctioned demonization plot to eradicate, to turn public opinion. It had nothing to do with Falun Gong. That was, I heard about the gas in the subway stations. Yeah, it had nothing to do with it. It's the same as the staged self-immolation in Beijing. If they look up false fire on YouTube, the same thing happened pretty much in China, where Falun Gong were demonized as some cult, some sinister evil religion. Yeah, exactly what you're putting up on the screen. I would implore your viewer to look at that. Now, we must understand that there's no limit to what the communist regime has done to demonize and persecute Falun Gong with its massive propaganda machine. When the persecution started in 1999, the world wanted to know what was Falun Gong all about. Why? What was this opium? What was this life force? And before we could get to it, get to the mainstream, the communist regime, with its massive propaganda machine, its largest military force, its massive amounts of misappropriated funds, targeted the mainstream media, set up a massive propaganda machine demonizing Falun Gong day in and day out, in China particularly, on their state-run media. When you go into China, like you said, and you Google Falun Gong, or you Google Tibet, or you Google anything that is free, you will not find anything that is second opinion or state or independent or outside of the communist regime's propaganda machine. So it's very hard to understand what Falun Gong is. But yeah, it had nothing to do with any bombings or nerve gas or self-immolation. Falun Gong is very peaceful and very relaxed. And actually, the founder has been nominated for 5-time Nobel Peace Prizes, and he's been nominated by the European Parliament for the Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought, and he's also a recipient of the Freedom House International Religious Freedom Award. And I urge people to learn the Falun Gong exercises, to read the philosophy, to read the book. There's nothing cultish about it. I come from a Jewish family. I mean, I've learned a lot of religious texts in my life, from Hinduism, from Buddhism, from Taoism, from Catholicism. You know, yoga was called a big cult before it was accepted into the worldwide community. You know, Falun Gong is nothing more than just a spiritual movement that has been severely persecuted and demonized by the communist regime. And I often ask Chinese people who have been severely brainwashed by the communist regime into thinking that this is evil, this is political, this is a cult, this is a terrorist group. I say, well, if Falun Gong is such an evil, cultish, demonic group who are terrorists and kill themselves, then why are they being so persecuted? And why has the communist regime sent hundreds and thousands of Falun Gong practitioners to death camps and institutionalized re-education camps and hospitals, and killing them for their organs? And not only killing them for their organs, but selling their organs as the most healthiest organs in the world illegally without any consent.
It's really crazy.
Yeah, they are silent. They're speechless, especially with all the plethora and the corpus of evidence that has come out to confirm the allegations are true.
And have you ever met Li Hongzhi, the founder?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. I have. Very, very humble man. He runs a little. I think he runs a little store with his wife and his daughter in New York. He's a permanent resident. Very humble man. Very peaceful man. He used to teach a lot, but now he's just he's in New York. He lives in New York. and just very good man. Yeah,
Huh.
he's not a god. He's not a supreme leader. He's just a genuine teacher who just wants to teach people to turn their hearts towards goodness, teach people about truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. One of many teachers in China, one of many teachers in the world. And again, Falun Gong is one of many people, one of many practices. I've been lucky to be a Falun Gong practitioner for over 17 years now, and
Wow.
it's benefited my life completely. And I don't come off cultish or terroristic or crazy. You know, I live a
You seem
normal
like a
life.
nice guy.
Thank you very much. You know, I'm not. I like to enjoy my life. I like the final things in life. I like the business. I'm a normal person. You know, but I've done so much work to expose this evil and to safeguard this beautiful practice, because it is a beautiful practice. And again, according to a source, a military surgeon, captive Falun Gong adherents are shipped in sealed freight trains. I mean, guys, sealed freight trains. I mean, I come from a Jewish family, and I know my family in the Holocaust were being persecuted. I remember the stories that my grandmother used to tell to me, share with me. She couldn't believe what was going on in Nazi Germany before the Americans liberated the camps and the Russians liberated the camps. But according to a military surgeon, captive Falun Gong adherents are shipped in sealed freight trains to and from camps, with as many as 5,000 being transferred in a single day. He said he witnessed a specifically dispatched freight train transferring over 7,000 Falun Gong practitioners in a trip from Tanjing City to Jilin area. The source recalled, it ran at night, guarded by the Chinese army. Everyone on board was handcuffed to specifically designated handrails atop the ceiling like rotisserie chickens.
Whoa.
I mean, the torture that's been going on in the labor camp systems, that actually skyrocketed all over China after Falun Gong was persecuted and banned. The labor camp system. Ethan Gutman, actually the author of The Slaughter, after 8 years of investigation, I mean, these people are serious investigators, and he actually shared, again, what do you say to those people who still doubt that organ harvesting has occurred or is occurring on a large scale in China, especially through the use of Falun Gong practitioners? And again, Ethan Gutman said, the dogs bark, the caravan moves on. Look, The Slaughter, my book, has been out for a year. That's plenty of time for serious reviewers to question my conclusions. I cannot think of one who has. Even the South China Morning Post, who obviously had to give a critical review given their financial relationship with the mainland, didn't dare. And I stand by every footnote, every interview. I don't begrudge anyone the right to doubt. As I say in my book, these are serious allegations, toxic allegations. But no one has the right to dismiss the allegations without actually reading the corpus of work that has been published. The Slaughter, Bloody Harvest by David Kilgore and David Mattis, and State Organs, not to mention all the investigative reports that have been authored by the Epoch Times, the World Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong, and Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. The investigation started in 2006, yet the volume of investigative work is only increasing. You want to comment? Hit the books. If someone is too lazy to read about the subject or just doesn't care enough about China's atrocities to bother, perhaps they should keep silent.
It really is a shocking and bizarre circumstance. I'm surprised we haven't heard more about this in the United States. This is the website here for Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. I mean,
Yes.
it's hard to imagine a more devilish practice. I mean, literally just like stealing organs from living people. And I mean, your analogy to the Holocaust in Nazi Germany is fitting. You know, why are we not, as a country, taking some sort of diplomatic action against China to have this end? We see this video here on the Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting website talking about a kidney being worth $130,000 US dollars. So you're saying people from the United States, Europe, elsewhere around the world are traveling to China and South Korea to purchase these black market organs?
Yes, people also from South Korea traveling to China, absolutely. The medical associations, think about this, guys. Only 4 medical associations around the world have outlawed or banned organ tourism. Israel, Spain, Taiwan, and Italy. And out of all those, how many countries in the world? Only 4. Even the Canadian and the American medical associations haven't banned anything, haven't been put into laws, and they all know this is going on. The governing bodies, the United Nations, they all know this is going on. I mean, just recently, Darfur, which is the Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, they came out, and it's on their website on March 21st, about the Vatican, who continues efforts to court the Chinese Communist Party. That's the article right there, how the Chinese transplant officials appeared at an organ trafficking conference. I mean, why is the Vatican hosting an organ trafficking conference? I mean, it's just a hint of the papacy increasing efforts to gain favor for the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's sick to you. And taking favor and aiding and abetting the communist regime. The transplantation societies are lavished and bribed by gifts and money and luxurious products by the Chinese communist regime to stay quiet and to go ahead with their propaganda machine and saying, no, we banned organ transplantation. There's nothing going on like that. Also, the one-child policy, we're not doing that anymore. We're only forcing now our citizens to have children. I mean, to force them not to have children, to force them to have children is evil. I mean, so thank goodness for Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, this board of doctors that have come out to destroy the garbage and the smoke and mirrors and the deception of the communist regime, and to hold and to bring the feet of these so-called great governing bodies and even the Vatican, and hold their feet to the fire and say, listen, what are you guys doing? I mean, is this how you people want to be known? To be standing on the wrong side of destiny, to be aiding and abetting the communist regime? I mean, even with Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter and even Apple, aiding and abetting the communist regime. It's shocking. I mean, so that's why I take my hat off to you, Jason, and your listeners for allowing me to come onto your show to share about this, because very few people and very few media and very few networks actually come back to me and actually allow me to come on. Thank goodness for Anastasia Lin. She was Miss World Canada 2015 and 2016. And Miss Anastasia Lin, the Miss World Beauty Pageant winner, 2015-2016, Anastasia Lin, she has used her crown to go around the world to also expose this, because she practices Falun Gong and her father in China practices Falun Gong. Exactly, that's her. Yep. Wonderful woman, and she goes around the world to express concern because she was denied access into the 2017 Miss World in China because she practices Falun Gong.
Wow.
The Miss World was bribed, and they banned her passport, and she wasn't allowed to go in. Yeah. And Miss World stayed silent, did nothing, and the pageant continued, and she was made to stay out of China because she practices Falun Gong.
What's the quote about the victory of evil when honest men remain silent? There's some quote about that.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean,
Yes,
this is something that I'm just learning about, Mitchell, and I'm pleased to have you on the show and help you share the message. So you're currently residing in Vietnam, correct?
I am. I can't say too much about it because they monitor our activity here. It's still communist Vietnam, as much as people think it's open. And just like in China, when you go to China, when the business people who are listening to your show go to China, or they live in China, or the students or the teachers that live in China, they say to me, well, there's nothing going on in China. I mean, it's free, it's open. Yeah, well, try and stand up against the government. Try and stand up against for Falun Gong. I dare you. I double dare you. I want to see that courage. And you know what will happen to you? You'll be banned so fast. You'll be locked up so fast. You won't be dealt with severely like a Chinese citizen. But you would be taken out of your job, you would be fired immediately, your passport will be banned, just like mine, and sent away and blacklisted, just like I have been.
What do you
I try to
mean?
get a
What
job.
happened? What happened to your passport and being sent away?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. For 17 years, I've been a full-on as I'm now. I mean, I'm sure the communist regime is monitoring this show, but because of my advocacy, and I pat myself on the back. The Chinese spies have come after me. They've broken into my car. Now, don't get alarmed, Jason. Don't worry. They're not going to touch you. But,
they got other ways of messing with me. It's already
yeah,
happened.
they're messing with you, exactly. And YouTube as well. And, I mean, they monitor everything. Anyway, and I have some friends that are exposing child trafficking and child abuse, and all the elites and their pedophile sick rings. I mean, they'll do anything to also shut those people down as well.
Right.
So anyway, the communist regime has sent out spies to break into my computer, to break into my car, to threaten me and my family. And they were blacklisted me, and I knew this because they actually shared with me. I had to sit down with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was located. I'm an American citizen, actually, and I had to sit down with two men in black. They actually bought me a lunch, and they said to me, "Yeah, you're monitored. They blacklisted your passport. We know full well about it."
This was in the U.S.
Yeah, headquartered. The FBI is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia.
Why?
Same as where.
So the United States blacklisted your passport?
No. The Chinese regime blacklisted. No. The Americans didn't. No. Okay. God bless America, but it's also been hijacked by communist ideology that has been coming out of China, and with the Rockefellers, with George Soros, that's a whole other issue in entirety. But right. Their model and their platform is the communist regime and system of control. So anyway, I was applying for a teaching position, online teaching position with one of the Chinese platforms, Dada ABC and Say ABC and all these platforms that have sprung up in China. And I got the job, and I filled out the contract, I sent out my passport, and I never heard from them. I got the job and everything, and I kept emailing, and I realized, I know why. It's the communist regime blacklisted me. They don't want to have anything to do with me, and the proof of this is their silence, their consent. So I knew that they wouldn't give me the job, and to this day I haven't heard anything from them. So yeah, they've blacklisted me. But I pat myself on the back, ladies and gentlemen, and Jason, because you know what, the work that I'm doing to share about this and to uphold the dignity of Falun Gong and to uphold the dignity of the other people who have been persecuted in China, there's nothing like it. I can sleep at night knowing that I'm done right and I'm doing God's work, and I've contributed a little of my heart to do what I can for no money, for no name, for no recognition, and for no fame, just to get the word out there, just for people like yourselves to go out there and to share the websites and to see what's going on in China, and to know about the truth about Falun Gong, and at least try the exercises and read the philosophy and see that it's not some kind of evil cult or some terrorist group that the communist regime claimed it to be. But it's a beautiful spiritual movement that does wonders for the body, and that's why they've been killed for their organs, sadly to say. And anyway, that's why I'm grateful to be on your show, Jason.
And so, Mitchell, what would you say for people who are watching right now, what's the most effective way for them to get involved? I know you're not looking for any financial support or anything like that, but how can we raise, because like I said, I have a feeling most people watching this have never heard of Falun Gong and have no idea that the Chinese government is, I mean, it's really shocking. It is Nazi-esque, and it's surprising to me that Donald Trump would be engaging in a trade war and all of this tough talk against China with no mention of this. I mean, forget about Falun Gong, just the deliberate persecution of any group and death sentencing like this without having committed a crime and no trial. They're just scooping people up. And I mean, even, I know many people object to the death penalty, but just death penalty by extracting critical organs is so bizarre to even contemplate. I think it's hard for most people to, it's one of those things that's so terrible that when you first hear it, it's so repulsive to the mind that it just almost can't be believed.
A new form of evil, absolutely. And that's why there's a great documentary called Hard to Believe, the one that you're actually showing your audience at, and that's Enver Tohti. That's the Chinese surgeon who I sat down with 2 weeks ago in Westminster, and he shared about the databases and how hardtobelievemovie.com, and how the Chinese Communist regime is engaged in global organ harvesting, tourism, and transplantation. And they've databased 100 million Falun Gong practitioners. They've databased over 70 million Uyghur Muslims, house Christians, Tibetan Buddhists.
Wow.
These are the 4 main groups, but the largest group, the Falun Gong, to extract their organs and go global with this organ transplantation, tourism, this evil, sick business. The body exhibitions, I'm not sure if you've heard about the body exhibition.
I was going to ask you about that. I've heard that those bodies are the bodies of Chinese prisoners. Are they Falun Gong practitioners?
Yes, indeed. They are.
Wow.
They are, certainly, yeah.
So maybe people should not be going to that bodies. I've been to it.
Yes. It's very creepy. It's very, very creepy and very eerie feelings when you see those bodies. They are plasticized bodies. They've actually been sold to the body exhibitions by one of the arch fiends and perpetrators of the communist regime, Bo Xilai, who was one of the main men, or one of the main right-hand men of Jiang Zemin, Jiang Zemin, the former president of China, and he has been caught with official documents, him and his wife, stealing Falun Gong practitioners' bodies and then plasticizing them and then selling them to the body worlds for massive amounts of money. I mean, this body worlds is now worth $60 million. I mean,
wow.
It's insane amounts of money. Yeah, and
it
come back
seems to be closed here in New York. I wonder if that has anything to do with them realizing that they're showing you dead people. I mean, this is the Discovery Channel has a museum in Times Square where they're showing everything from, you know, Hunger Games to Avengers to Legos. But I know they have a bodies exhibit in Las Vegas. This is a Chinese thing, Terracotta Warriors. I saw that in Shenzhen or something. Yes. But those are statues, not dead people.
Exactly. The body world is full of Falun Gong practitioners, full.
Wow.
And to answer your question about what people can do, ladies and gentlemen, those who are listening, if you are business CEOs, if you're business executives, if you are professors or teachers in your schools, show the videos. Go to stoporganharvesting.org. Go to Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. Look up on YouTube, David Kilgore, David Mattis, Anastasia Lin, forced organ harvesting in China. Discuss this with your students. Discuss this with your board and say, look, are we really going to invest in China because of this atrocity? Because basically the multinational corporations, they know full well, but there's so much money involved, the contractual obligations, the slave labor, the institutionalized slave labor. I mean, the massive amounts of slave labor that are Falun Gong practitioners, basically, that are making products for McDonald's and Nestle and Mary Kay and all these other multinational corporations, Walmart, particularly Walmart. I mean, why do you think all the goods are so cheap in Walmart? I mean, it's a slave labor factory that has become a slave labor warehouse. And who do you think is making all those products? Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghur Muslims, Democrat. I mean, it's shocking.
So this should be an issue that would interest Donald Trump, even if he's not interested in protecting people's human rights. What you've just described has a major economic impact on manufacturing in the United States. So perhaps raising awareness of this can lead to some solution that's more economically driven.
Exactly. And they all know, Jason, they all know. Trump knows, Clinton knows, Obama knows, Bush knows. Obama was given a letter by a Falun Gong practitioner. Clinton and the State Department, they all know. Uh, um, Trump actually signed into law on January 1st, I think. He signed into law that he's going to go after a lot of pedophiles and
Right.
trafficking. I'm not sure exactly the executive
Executive order, right.
order, but he knows full well about the Falun Gong. They all know. I mean, this has been going on for 18 years. The State Department, the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, they all know. Some people claim that Falun Gong is a CIA operative cult. And like that's all propaganda from the communist regime. I mean, it's a spiritual movement that have been killed. They've been killed for their organs. Those who want to learn about Falun Dafa can just go to Falun Gong, can go to falundafa.org. It's very easy. It's a very simple, easy to learn practice, but they've been killed for their organs. And I implore people to go to the websites. If anyone is a reporter, if anyone is and that emblem, falundafa.org, the emblem of Falun Dafa, where you see the Shrivasta, or people call it the swastika, that's Hitler stole that. The swastika, well, that emblem right there, that has been used in countless civilizations. That swastika right there is actually, if you go to Southeast Asia, if you go to China, if you go to Indonesia, in Bali, you actually see the Buddhist temples and the Buddhist statues all have the swastikas. And these are the Tai Chi symbol as well. So that Shrivasta is the wheel of life. That symbol is a very ancient, positive symbol. It's been held it's the wheel of light. It's been held in the Germanians, the Aztecs, even the Romans had that symbol. It was also found in Jewish temples and Hindu temples 2,500 years ago. So, oh God, what is this Nazi symbol? No, Hitler stole it and used it for that.
We're losing you a bit there, Mitchell. Mitchell, can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
We're losing you a bit there. I wonder if they're not attacking your signal. Yeah, it's interesting. I noticed this symbol looking like a swastika. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Quinn Michaels, who is a guy who appears on this show quite frequently. Quinn has been doing investigating into various occult religions that are, he talks about Nazism and its ties to the occult, and how these occult groups tend to take the religious symbols of other religions and combine aspects of religions to, I don't really know for what purpose, but they sort of bastardize these symbols. And I think that most people in modern society associate this symbol obviously with Nazi Germany, so perhaps it was an effort to malign this symbol.
Yeah, demonize or Falun Gong with goodness and fortune and the wheel of light. And if you look up the swastika and the Shrivasta, it's actually called the Shrivasta. It's in the ancient Indian language. Hindu from Indonesia. I came from Bali. I was living in Bali for 5 months. When you look at their houses, they have the swastika on the houses. It's all for goodness and for good fortune. Just like in Taiwan or in China or in other places, Thailand and in Cambodia, you'll see on the ancient Buddhist statues and the temples and the pagodas, all the swastikas, the Shrivastas. So anyway, again, if anyone is out there listening, any reporters, any talk show hosts, any CEOs or professors, share this with your board members before you make this to invest in China. Rather go to Thailand, rather go to Vietnam, rather go to Taiwan, but stay out of China. Just stay out of China, because your money is going to aiding and abetting atrocities that you haven't even been aware of, because there is no freedom in China. It's all controlled by the communist regime, and you will not see that unless you stir the pot in terms of standing for human rights or saying no to the communist regime's brutality against innocent groups of people.
Yeah,
so,
my time in China at the film festival was unremarkable. It seemed very much like any other Europe or any other place you would go to, we could, freely walk around to movie theaters. There were restaurants, people driving Mercedes, BMW. I did have that thought of like, hey, I thought communist China, they'd be like walking around whipping people or something, and it wasn't the case. So it's interesting. And then it also causes me to think about, as you said, how even in the United States, things that we're saying are monitored. It's a very insidious subversion of our freedom. And so I think it is something that we all need to be very aware of as our planet becomes more of a global village. These types of human rights atrocities are really a concern for everyone, not something that we should merely dismiss as a thing happening in a faraway country. So people who want to get in touch with Mitchell can do that on Facebook. He's there, Mitchell Nicholas Gerber, and is that your preferred contact method, Mitchell?
Yeah, that's perfect. And then you can just add me as a friend or contact me through Messenger if you want. If you have any reporters, any people that want me to go through Skype like we are doing now, into their auditoriums or conference halls, I'm more than willing to share. And I work closely with the and I'm in close contact with the investigators, the main investigators. We have all the information at the websites that you're showing, the Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, faluninfo.net, stoporganharvesting.org. Also, you can sign a petition. There's a sign a petition, and people wonder, well, what does a petition do? It's energetically, you always think about, and there's a powerful saying: the pen is more mighty than the sword.
Right.
When you sign a will, or when you sign a document stating that you have the power of attorney over your will, or you're signing a check, or you're signing a contract, it's putting your name on the document, saying, look, I have decided to choose this. So by signing a petition, you're deciding energetically to stand on the right side of destiny. So that makes it very, very good and very healthy and very powerful that with your name, even though it's not going to topple the communist regime, some people are like, well, we need to do more than that, Mitch. Come on, we need to bomb China. Some people are a little bit more passionate. I get it. But to sign your name to support the dignity of Falun Gong, to support stopping this evil, is a testament to your heart making the decision to stand on the right side of destiny. And that is a really powerful, incredible way of showing your support. So sign the petition, guys. Go to the websites, watch the videos, share with your families, your friends, your colleagues, your students. And if anyone wants me on their show or wants to do a report or invite me into their classrooms or their board meetings, I'm more than willing to do a presentation for you. No problem. No problem.
That's very good to hear, Mitchell. Thank you for what you're doing. And I'm just showing some of these websites. There are quite a lot of petitions. I mean, again, this is a relatively new subject. Falun Gong was founded in just 1992, so it's not really like an ancient practice or anything like that. It's a relatively new thing. And of course, this persecution really began, as you said, after it was banned in China in 1999. And it's quite chilling to think about a major country banning a philosophy and I mean, it's like, where does it end? That's the beginning, but it's quite shocking to think about.
Absolutely. Just a spiritual movement. People in the West can call it a religion, that's fine, but it's more of a spiritual movement. I come from a Jewish family. I've learned about Christianity. Those are more religious movements to me. This Falun Gong, spiritual movement, very easy to learn, free to follow. You want to practice, you don't want to practice. There's no, force. There's no coercion, and there are absolutely no characteristics. And it has been tested by clinical psychologists, by world leaders, by dignitaries, and they've all come through and said, this is not a cult. There's no characteristics of a cult. There's no characteristics of any forced collusion or coercion that the communist regime is saying. It's nonsense. It's only it's deception, it's smoke and mirrors. Just like going to Beijing or going to Shanghai, going to China, and you're seeing all the luxury cars, and it's almost like walking in the West. That everything's modernized, is free, so to speak. But only when you start to talk up and about human rights and democracy and freedom and independent thought, that's when you will get nailed. You'll get cracked down so fast you won't even. You feel like you're you're part of the mafia or a drug dealer, or like you're a murderer.
Crazy.
For standing for human rights, or for animal rights, or women's rights. Yeah. So, one more thing I want to mention, everybody, is that those, Jason, for avid readers, there's a great publication called the 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party. 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party.
Yeah.
That's the one that has basically, it's the catalyst to cause the collapse of the communist regime socially, politically, and economically, particularly socially. Consider reading that book. It's translated again in 33 languages.
Man, I don't like that. 33.
Yeah, 33. So it's inspired about 200 to 300 million Chinese already to quit the Communist Party. And for those who really, truly want to know what's behind the Red Wall of China, in a way that you've never really read before, it's very, very detailed. It's extremely mind-blowing. This book, the 9 commentaries, it's 9 lectures that will share everything you need to know about how evil communism is, how evil the communist regime is, and what it's done to the world, and to the Chinese people. It controls pretty much all the known dictatorships in the world. The North Koreans have been controlled. The Russians have been controlled by it now.
Wow.
Most of the major dictators in Africa, I mean the Middle East, even America. Even America has been hijacked by the communist ideology, the political correctness, the common core. I mean, Chinese communist tools, microaggressions, mandated this, mandated that, forced this, forced that. If you talk, and that's why many people in the States have become communistly, are starting to become communistly controlled. I remember America when you were free to share what you wanted to share. There was not this divide and conquer, this inciting of hatred, this division in the family, the taking out of the guard, out of the schools, out of the Constitution. And I'm an American citizen. I've been there for 20 years, so I've seen rapidly how communist China has infiltrated into the West, and it has been forced from globalist powers that have hijacked America. And I hope Trump can do something about this and see this. I really do. I'm not sure if he will. I hope he will. I don't know. But America is in a fight for its life right now. I mean, we are at a war with a communist dictatorship that has infiltrated into the West, especially in the Antifa movement. I mean, you want to talk about a cult or a terrorist movement. You've got the Antifa movement, which has just the ones that dress up in black. I mean, I'm not condemning the neo-Nazi. I'm not supporting the neo-Nazis or white supremacists. But when you call yourself a patriot and you call yourself a constitutionalist, and that's another thing, the gun grabbing, the Second Amendment, I just want to say as well, Mao Zedong took the guns, Hitler took the guns, Mussolini took the guns. So to be able to stand for something and to fail to support what is right and to fail to expose what is evil is unacceptable. So what my point is that you must be very careful with living in a normal society like America, becoming a communist hijacked nation. We can't let this happen. We must not let this happen. And Trump let this happen, especially even in Canada. There's this inclusivity. People have the right to say what they feel. You want to call people what you want to call people. You have the right. You have the right to say what you want to say. You're not going to hurt and harm other people, but you have the right to say what you want to say. And that's what the communist regime will do. They'll scapegoat people and harm people, and then they'll brutally persecute people. And that's why the 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party, ladies and gentlemen, is a very good documentary and a publication to read about and to learn about how evil communism is. And that's why I'm grateful I can share it with you.
Right. And before we close out, Mitchell, I just wanted to talk briefly about this article I found in the New York Times. I didn't realize until the conversation that we're having right now the importance that New York holds for the Falun Gong movement, with the founder now residing in New York. And I have to say, I did previously see a lot of Falun Gong activity, but I haven't in a long time. And so before we connected just an hour ago, I had Googled Falun Gong New York and came up with this article here, which is talking about how an anti-Falun Gong group called the Chinese Anti-Cult World Alliance came to be the primary opposition of the Falun Gong here in New York, and even has initiated a federal lawsuit against them. Members of the Falun Gong have initiated a lawsuit against this anti-cult group, saying that Falun Gong is not, in fact, a cult, and it's now a battle taken to the courts. We hear a lot about these federal lawsuits, so it's an interesting thing. Perhaps we could have a future show where maybe I could connect with the founder. Remind me what his name was again?
Mr. Lee Hong-si. Yeah, Mr. Lee Hong-si, a very genuine teacher. I mean, he's just he taught these exercises. He's been nominated for 5 Nobel Peace Prizes. And yeah, all the investigators I can bring you on the show as well. I mean, Falun Gong has got no characteristics of a cult.
Right.
Unfortunately, you have these kind of demonic groups that have been paid by the communist regime, all kinds of different, paid by the communist regime, and to smear Falun Gong's name, to demonize it. And there's nothing new. There's nothing new. And look, when you put 2 and 2 together, and the evidence about how Falun Gong is a spiritual movement and is really truly wonderful, versus all the testimonials of how the health benefits, the vitality, and how they've been killed for their organs in China, and all this is coming out, and all the investigators and the corpus of information like Ethan Gutman was sharing. Don't just deny. Don't make a decision until you read it, and then you put what the communist regime and their propaganda machine and their so-called groups have been saying about Falun Gong, and you put 2 and 2 together, you see the true picture. You see this. It doesn't take much to see the true picture and put everything together. So yeah, that's Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, he comes out and speaks to Falun Gong practitioners, and he's a wonderful man on a couple of occasions, and just a truly wonderful, dignified, and humble man. And it's just, I've been practicing Falun Gong for 17 years. I'm not in some cult. I'm not. I live a normal life. I practice these 5 exercises, and I try to conduct myself based on truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. And that's it, guys. I mean, there's no money involved. There's no, you must do this, you must do that. How dare you leave our group? It's like, what are you doing? Running the mafia? I mean, it's nonsense. I've never been asked for a dime. I've never been asked for a cent. I've never been told you must read this, you must study this. If you go out of our group, we're going to kill you. It's ridiculous. But this is the demonization. This is the propaganda of the communist regime. And that article that you saw, yes, Falun Gong practitioners are suing these kinds of defamation. It's absolutely right to sue people for defamation of character. The Falun Gong practitioners are also suing the former president of the communist regime, Jiang Zemin, for his persecution and decimation of their character. In China, there's a big lawsuit going on in China as well, underground, trying to get to the courts in China. Because when Falun Gong became the largest practice in China, it permeated from judges to military generals to the highest level members of the communist regime and their families are practicing. But because the gang of scoundrels under the communist regime's head leader, Jiang Zemin, outlawed the practice, everyone went along with it. Nowadays, high-ranking communist officials, just like the Nazi generals and the Nazis that fled after Nazi Germany, after Hitler was overthrown, and they were brought to justice. This is exactly what's going to be happening very soon in the future, where these criminals are going to be brought to justice, and anyone who has defamed Falun Gong is going to be sued in court. They're going to get their day in court because it's not acceptable. After hundreds and thousands, countless deaths have been occurring in China. Child custody has been taken away, graduation certificates, bank accounts frozen. I mean, this is a modern-day Nazi Holocaust. It's different, but it is a new form of evil where now they've been killed and stripped alive. I mean, Falun Gong practitioners have been going through the worst kind of degradation in 18 years, and nothing has been done about it. And now we need to go to court. We need to bring these criminals to justice. We need to be vigilant in suing people who are defaming the good name of Falun Gong that has brought nothing but goodness to the world. So thank you, Jason, for letting me come on, and thank you, everybody, for listening, because without your support and without your voice and without your ears, it couldn't be made possible. You know, I'm just a simple activist, you know, trying to get the word out. That's all I'm trying to do.
Well, I appreciate that, Mitchell. Of course, my guest tonight has been Nicholas Gerber. He's an activist for human rights, really, and we've been talking about the Falun Gong and the insane persecution, torture, and murder of its practitioners. I really appreciate you joining me tonight, Mitchell, and I would welcome you back in the future. I'm going to make an effort to try to contact Li Hongzhi and see if we can't have a conversation between you, he, and I, and try to learn some more about this so that we can raise the awareness and hopefully stop this kind of senseless persecution. I want to thank Mitchell for joining me. I want to thank everyone for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.